As alluded to earlier, the lack of service delivery in some parts of the country continues to be of great concern, and the ongoing blackouts have made matters worse in some municipalities. And that's according to the South African Local Government Association, or otherwise known as SALGA. It says blackouts are adding to the pressure on financially strained municipalities as they are forced to use expensive generators. For more on this story, we're joined by Thami Ntuli from the South African Local Government Association as the provincial chairperson. Thank you, Mr. Ntuli, for your time. But this is an ongoing problem affecting all sectors in the economy, let alone municipalities. Why do you think that Eskom would pay attention to SALGA's concerns when there is a broader worry around the lack of direction when it comes to dealing with load shedding?
Good morning to yourself and to the viewers. In fact, as SALGA and the Province of Natal, we are not only referring our dialogue, which we are starting to Eskom, but also to the national government, in specifically the treasurer, because what has happened, this load shedding in rural municipalities, it takes more than 10 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating, more than 10 hours a day. And when you understand that in rural municipalities, we don't have factories, we don't have industries, and even the consumption of electricity is quite very low, but they are the ones who are suffering a lot. And we are saying rural municipalities has been facing the backlog in terms of service delivery, and even the location, the equitable share is not equitable to address the backlogs that the rural municipalities are faced with. Hence, the formula which is still used today to allocate funds by national treasurer, it makes cognizance of the population size, whereas there are other important factors, the economic factors, the issues of the backlog in terms of the infrastructure development. Hence, we are saying the second blow is this one of more than 10 hours, whereas you find that in urban areas, only 2 hours of load shedding, but in rural municipalities already is more than 10 hours. And if the Eskom can announce another stage, a severe stage, it means in rural municipalities it will be a complete blackout.
Mr. Ntuli, I beg your pardon. I hate to interrupt you, but in a recent conference, I just want to get through the issues. You had been quoted that it seems that Eskom is being held to ransom by a diesel supplies. In other words, they're running a parallel economy while Eskom is hemorrhaging nothing less than 82 million rand on diesel per day. Is this correct?
Yes, according to the reflection by Eskom, we're of the view that the diesel which Eskom itself is using is quite expensive as compared to using the coal, which we're all aware that it's leaving the country in tons and tons, and I think is available for Eskom to use. And the pressure of this load shedding, it makes municipalities to fail to provide services such as water, since the generators are pumping using electricity and water to the reservoirs. And some of the municipalities have resorted to buy the generators, and the diesel too, even to the municipalities, is quite very expensive. You find that the money they pay in a month for the electricity bill, they will spend in a week for diesel. And it is more or less to the local businesses in rural municipalities. You'll find that some, they afford to buy generators, but they, at the same time, they also incur more expenses for buying the diesel, as I've explained on with the municipalities, how diesel are expensive. And those who are emerging local business people who have just rented the places or shops, you'll find that they will not even afford to actually buy the generators. Ultimately, at the end of the month, they will not even afford to pay for their rent. The person who's employed or people who are employed there, they will have not to get salaries. As a result, they will shut down. In fact, this is going to really cause a total collapse when it comes to the economy of the rural municipality. That is why SALGA, we're appealing for the National Treasurer, in fact, for the bailout, that there should be a special grant which will compensate the use of other sources of energy, such as the generators for the diesel to the businesses and to the local municipalities. That is our view. because the concern
Yes,
is
sir.
that...
Sorry, just in the interest of time, Mr. Ntuli, so how far are you in terms of that process of requesting assistance from government? Because by your own explanation is that this is a dire situation, particularly in rural communities.
In fact, we started to look the other SALCA structures in other provinces, and we'll be lobbying even the eNCA, will be lobbying other interest groups so that we all appeal for the special grant that will mitigate the circumstances, and even with the municipalities themselves will be converging soon to have a dialogue on this subject, because we're of the view that it is in the interest of even everyone in South Africa. Because when you talk about the local economy, we're already in a crisis of unemployment. If then we do not mitigate the circumstances right now, it will mean we'll have much more problems. Hence, as SALCA, we are calling for a special bailout or for a special grant to mitigate these expensive diesel and generators.
Thank you so much for your time. That's Mr. Thami Ntuli from the South African Local Government Association. He's the KZN provincial chairperson, saying that the situation in rural parts of KwaZulu-Natal are even harder hit because of load shedding.